Hi, Harsh. Thanks for joining in and good to have you here. So just a
Thanks,
quick
thanks, Anu.
yes, just a quick background of you, Harsh, before I roll it to you and we discuss your success story. So for those that are watching it or would be reading the transcript, so Harsh and I we're working on his application journey for I think around 5, 6 months now, right, Harsh? When the initial discussions up until now, and he has gotten admits from two top US business schools, Washington Foster and UNC Kenan-Flagler, also with a sizable scholarship. And we thought we'd do this success story debrief to discuss Harsh's background, why he wanted to do an MBA, the application journey itself, and kind of the working process with me with admitStreet, and also his tips for people that are applying that are looking at US business schools and so on. So the goal is to basically deep dive into the application process and gain insights from someone that has been there and done that. Right. So with that, thanks again, Harsh, for joining in. Maybe you can just start with a quick background, right? If you could tell us about your where you're from, what you studied, and your work experience.
Sure. So I am natively from Patna, Bihar. I have lived all my life in Gujarat. I graduated from IIT Kharagpur with chemical engineering bachelor's. I pivoted to product management after around 1.5 years of work. I have total around 6.5 years of work experience now across various startups in B2B or B2C, in e-commerce, advertising, and study abroad sectors. Um, so in product, I've been there for around 4.5 years.
Right, right. So you shifted from engineering way to product, right? Which again, not a lot of people do pre-MBA, but you'd already done that. So what is the motivation? Why did you, or why did you want to do an MBA?
Multiple factors, I would say, since it is a lot of investment for anybody. I feel, you know, you would think about it a lot, and you would have a lot of factors. Like the core things for me were first doing an MBA outside India to get an opportunity to learn from the best people in my field, uh, post MBA and even during the MBA. The second would be to have a formal business education degree. I graduated in engineering and I solved chemical engineering problems. But since our careers are like spanning 30, 40 years, I feel there is a lot of necessity and need to have like sit down for 1 or 2 years and have a solid foundation so that you can build on top of it. What I worked in the last 4, 5 years, it was learning in hacky ways. Whenever you've gotten a new problem, like you've gotten a growth problem, so you read about how to solve growth problems, but not having the whole picture. So I feel that foundation is very necessary. And third, the network which you create in terms of a global network. You're not just limited to like people in India, but you have people from various countries. You get exposure to different cultures, even outside your professional life. I feel that's very valuable for me. I enjoy that. It gets me out of my comfort zone. I guess these would be the three core reasons.
Right. And you were or you are primarily focused on the US region, right? That was sort of like your priority or focus when you were looking at school. So what was, or what was the reason for beyond the tech angle, of course, which is given, but was there any specific reasons why you prioritized the US?
So apart from the tech ecosystem which is there in US, there are other things also which I feel. The second thing is US schools offer a lot of scholarships as compared to schools outside US. Second would be the people or the nationalities represented in the US schools are a lot more, I feel. And also the opportunities, not just in tech, but in various sectors, you know, and not just in professional life, but, even outside that are a lot within US. Like it's a very big country. You have like from west to east, you have four time zones. happening, a lot of different cultures even within there. So I feel these two were very core reasons why I was considering US over the other regions. And the third would be having a lot of peer schools. So there is a lot of cross learning happening, like in competitions, people from five schools like Stanford, Harvard, or like three, four other schools would come up, would interact. So I feel that cross learning is also super important. And you have a lot of people from India also going there, so the people and the cross-learning experience from the schools, curriculums, I feel is
Absolutely.
super.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So tell us about your GMAT journey, Harsh. You've taken it, I think, a couple of times, right? So how was your preparation like, and how was your GMAT journey like?
So I gave GMAT three times. The first time I feel I was not very serious. I gave it in 2021 July. I just thought I would give one attempt, and I feel that should not be how somebody approaches it. I just did 1 month of preparation, and that too not very in-depth preparation, I feel. I got a 690 back then. The second attempt I gave was in August 2022. I was a bit more serious. I was struggling majorly in the English part, in sentence correction. I did not like spending a lot of time there. So then I had scored a 710 in August 2022. Then I took a pause, that, I don't know if I can improve right now. I need some time. I should figure out how to, improve my score. Then I gave my GMAT finally this last year in August 2024, where I scored a 675, which is like around 96 percentile, if I remember correctly. So the things which I did this time was quant was something which solved a lot. So earlier I was getting a Q49. I got like a much better score this time because the problems in quant in actual GMAT exam are quite tougher than what a lot of testing companies or even the official guide has. So earlier I just used to solve that, but the questions in exams were good. So I did a lot of quant practice and for tough problems. So then quant was solved. Uh, the English part, some of it like was already solved. Sentence correction was not there, even though I had studied for it 6 months back. But in RC and in critical reasoning, what I did was I solved a lot more this time. Earlier, I just knew that okay, I know this, I should be able to do it. But this time, I remember I gave around 15 or 16 mocks before the exam to get used to the rhythm and stamina of sitting for 2.5 hours at a stretch. The third thing, there was a new section this time,
Right.
um, which like people didn't have a lot of material around on the internet.
Data insights, right? So yeah.
Correct, data insights. So there, the I looked at a few YouTube videos and then realized that this section should be picked at the end because there are limited questions here. So I remember I would have bought one or two like mock pieces and did it after quant. So the way I had positioned it was quant first, then once quant basics were covered, like then I started preparation for the verbal reasoning or the English part. Once I was comfortable here, then I picked up the data insights part because quant was already solved for, and I practiced a lot more there. But even in the exam, I feel the data insights part was where I did not do very well. Verbal and quant had gone very well. The data insights part was not good. I got a 77 percentile there, and that reduced my score. So if I had to ever give my GMAT again, I would, uh, you know, uh, improve the data insights part.
But I guess you don't have to. You'll be joining a great school soon. So okay, good. So let's talk about the process after that, right? So after you had the GMAT score, so what was the thought process, or what was the way that you thought about schools? Because US also has a lot of very good schools, right? And each state also has its nuances and so on. So tell us about how you went through that process, right, on selecting the right schools and kind of applying to them.
So, as people say, GMAT is just one part of your entire application. Um, there are a lot of schools one can apply to. So I had like three or four factors. The first one being I knew what my one or two potential outcomes I want just after an MBA, a very immediate post MBA goal. So I needed to find schools that were aligned in their curriculum, in their courses, in their alumni network, in those two areas. So for me, it was consulting or tech, tech being like one of the plan Bs if consulting doesn't work out. So this was one major factor, analyzing and researching the school's curriculum and their placements in those areas, their concentrations. The second would be uh, thinking about schools in terms of ambitious, safe, and moderate according to your GMAT score. So, for example, for Indians, if you have a X GMAT score um, and the school's average is Y, you know, it would be you need to, increase, the school's average by let's say 20 or 30, depends, on the year. And then you would know if it's ambitious or safe for you. Like if the school's average is 700 and you have a 700 GMAT, you actually, would not be able to make it maybe because the school would consider Indians at 730 minimum. So this is important. The third thing is talking to people is super important, I feel, to get some context on, how is the school doing right now, and if the facts you have read on the internet are actually true uh, in today's world, and how is the current market, etc., behaving.
Right.
So talking to people gives you, kind of the validation and that research of the facts, like if it's correct or not. And the last thing would be the location of the school. I feel that's also super important. It should be like a very deliberate choice for you because there are a lot of options. Even in US, like there would be, I guess, 40, 45 schools which you can consider. And if you don't have these factors, it can be difficult, I think.
Right. Okay. Got it. And can you share a bit about the application process? So you applied last year, right, to some schools. So in hindsight, of course, what could have done better, and what did you do better during this time or during this application cycle that in a way resulted in the positive outcomes?
I feel I didn't have a lot of clarity on why I am doing an MBA and what would I do just after an MBA or 5, 10 years down the line back then. I had not thought of it a lot. Um, that was different this time. I kind of, you know, thought a lot and knew what I wanted to do, and I had plan B and plan C also. Second would be the application which I had written last year was, would be reflective of this lack of in-depth thought process. The goals I had written uh, were like a bit irrelevant, somebody might say, to what I had done till now. It wouldn't be,
Right.
much related. Um, I had not put in a lot of effort in building my resume. I thought like the first or the second version itself was very good in terms of the LORs, like, I had not talked to my recommenders about, what they think of me, what, you know, how am I writing my application, what I
Right.
feel are my strengths and all. So this time I feel in every part of the application, I was very, working very in depth. I had like, I remember 12 resume iterations this time for it, just as an example. So I
Right.
think every part of the process I respected it and worked like 10x more than last
Right. Absolutely, and that's a very valid point, right? Because I think in the traditional Indian sense, if you're applying to IITs, I mean, you are an IITian yourself, or NITs or so on, for bachelors, the score is the most important part. And if you have a very good score, you're more or less in. Maybe there's some interviews, but that's not the case for B schools abroad, right? The score is important, of course, but it is one of the pieces of the puzzle that go in along with all these other topics that you mentioned, right? The CV, even LORs, who you pick as recommenders, what is the story that they present or paint, is that aligned with what you're pitching to the school goals, and even interviews, right? Some schools have video Kira interviews and so on, and the in-person interviews. So absolutely. Okay. Uh, can you share about sort of, if you were, again, looking back in hindsight on this year's application process and the successful outcomes, what were, in your view, the key USPs or, standout points that you felt kind of, help you, succeed? And also, on that same topic, what were some of the challenges, right? Because every profile has its, strengths and also challenges or points of consideration. So a couple of points each on what were the key strengths and what are the challenges that you thought or you felt or you faced when you applied.
So I feel one thing was researching about the school very well. I think I knew a lot about these schools with you. Like when I was working, there was like detailed documents we created on each school where I had like six, seven areas uh, of research done. Like, where do people go on the, practical applications or practical courses? What are the concentrations? What are the courses there? What are the centers? We had a lot of research this year. Second would be the story which we had in our mind and the way uh, we were trying to convey it. We had a lot of clarity because we had thought about it a lot. We had four, five options we thought, then we refined it and reduced it to, let's say, two options. Then we discussed further and came to that one option. So there was a lot of iterations in the storyline we wanted to present, and there was a lot of attention to detail into like everything. When I say attention to detail, it's like even in the application form, where am I writing what? Because having attention to detail in every aspect gets you a very holistic application being presented to the school. I feel these three things were there. Um, the in terms of challenges, yeah, the one challenge which I feel a lot of Indians would face is like uh, these people with these, I would say, work ex or demographic, like Indian males working in like tech, we are overrepresented. So the competition is very high. You need to have some USPs in your profile which differentiate you from others. It can be work-wise or outside work, or how you present yourself in the interview, how your story comes out. Like, what are you bringing to the table which somebody else might not be? So you need to think from that angle a lot more, I guess, than people from other demographics or other work experience profiles might have to. So, differentiation is very important.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Let's jump to interviews, but before that, can you talk a bit about our working process, right? So you mentioned a couple of aspects on the topics, attention to detail, etc. But if we were to sort of double click on that, on what were broadly the steps that we worked on, and your thoughts on what was good, etc. on our working process.
I feel we were very structured from the start itself. In the B school selection piece, I had given my GMAT a bit late, around August 5th, I remember. We didn't have a lot of time, but we were very structured even when we didn't have a lot of time. I remember in 3 or 4 days, we aligned on a plan, we created an action plan, and even while we were selecting schools, we had a lot of data points and we were very thorough in our selection in actually every step. So we created like like a folder of sorts, created an action plan. Then we prepared milestones for each school, milestones for every draft review. So once we had a lot of structure, the anxiety of not meeting timelines or not being able to do it was less. And then, like I remember, we also applied in one of the early rounds of a school. So we had, I remember, only 20 days. But there was a lot of, feedback, in-depth feedback, and a lot of availability, I feel, from your side. Hence, you were able to move quickly, iterate quickly. I remember we had 12 iterations of my resume in 15 days. So we were again very thorough there. Um, then once the first school was done, we moved on to the next school. We had our template decided how we will think about it. And even we went into each level of detail. I remember while submitting for the first school, we were on call while I was submitting so that we could see all the questions in the application, what I had written there. And I remember like we had created a separate document for all the other application questions.
Right.
And reasons for moving jobs also something which we wrote, you know, and discussed. So we had a lot of depth. Then while moving to the next schools, I remember we had one or two hiccups, like some school having a new requirement or something. But we navigated it together. So I feel there was a lot of support, not just in doing something, but also in the overarching, you know, outcome that we want to receive and admit, and would do anything to get that. That's the ultimate goal. That I would say level of comfort or trust was there. Even at late nights, we edited. So then I guess the template was set. Like we had for next school that okay, by this date we would do the essays first, then we would do the other application. So I guess then after that it was a very smooth ride.
Right. Yeah, thank you. And I think it's both ways, right? As you said, I mean, only if you as a candidate are also completely involved in the process, sort of working on the feedback, iterating, etc., then it makes it easier, right? Also for me to, guide you, navigate you through what can be done better, and so on. So I think both the motivation and also the persistence, right? Because it does take time, it is time consuming, and sometimes it gets frustrating, it gets sort of it pushes you to limits when there's quick deadlines and stuff like that. So I think a lot of it is having, it's going back to what you mentioned on a plan and trying to, as much as possible, of course you can move around a couple of days, but as much as possible to stick around to it and then just execute.
And there was just one thing I wanted to add. It was like in this process, there would be a lot of times where the results would not go into your favor,
Right.
or you would be anxiously waiting for calls when your friends
Right.
are getting an interview call, etc. So
Right.
I feel you had that sense of calm and positivity that, okay, this didn't go into our favor, but something will. We have this remaining, we have this remaining, and this would definitely come. So you had that sense of positivity and calm, which reduced the anxiety a lot, and I could focus on getting the next thing done, which is in our control, rather than
Right.
thinking.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a good point, right? Because it also talks to the um, point of having a good mix of ambitious, reach, and safe programs. Because you don't want to go too ambitious at the same time, you don't want to play it too safe. So then it's a question of if you're applying to say 6 or 7 schools. Of course, ideal case scenario, you make it to all seven, but nobody does, or those are extremely rare cases. So then it's about what is the best that you can, and it's also a learning process, right? Because the moment you interview with, let's say, an ambitious school, even if you're waitlisted, even if you don't make it in the worst case, that experience adds on, right? The essays, the interview process, your whole understanding of how the process works adds on to all the other schools, right? Which I guess would have also helped in a certain way. So on that point, can we talk about interviews, right? So how is the interview process like? What were, any insights that you gained, or any sort of, tips that you like to share for people that will be interviewing?
So the research, both in terms of what you want from an MBA and what you've researched about the school, I think this is the core foundation or fundamentals in which, an interview success depends. The interviewer just wants to know about these factors in depth. It's more of a conversation with a standard template, I feel, because it's like a 30-minute conversation where they are trying to get this information from you. So the more research you do earlier and the more clear you are, the better you would be prepared for the interview. And obviously, communication is like a separate thing, but it's extremely important because that is the single barrier which can, you know, make it happen that you are not able to get this info to the other person. And if you're not able to get this info, the other person wouldn't know, and they are not able to judge, your story and your motivations. So I feel this interview, MBA interview, is not like a job interview where they are trying to assess your skill sets or can you do the job or not. This is more of a behavioral interview where they are just trying to get to know you, your motivations, how strong is your why, and how strongly do you need that seat in the class room. They
Right.
are trying to assess that along with communication and how well will you gel in the class and what will you contribute, what will you bring to the table.
Right. Right. And specifically to Foster and UNC, right, which is where you were successful in the process and also received a good scholarship. Are there any, insights or whether that's through the research that you gained or even going through the process of speaking to interviewers, etc., that you want to share about these two schools?
So, again, here also I feel candidates should talk to people in those schools to get some understanding about how that school conducts interviews because there are some differences from school to school. What
Right.
do they value in interviews? Like, for example, UNC has a lot of um, on the spot questions based on your past work ex or professional life. Like they would specifically ask you, I remember a question like, tell me a time when somebody was coming late to a weekly meeting or a daily meeting, like 10 minutes late every day. How would you handle that situation? Now you can't prepare for this. Like they have a lot of such questions. Uh, if somebody was not interested in work in a project, how did you tackle it? Uh, so I feel UNC has that, for example. Now Foster does not have such questions. They have like a very standard template of, why do you want to do an MBA? Why do you want to come to Foster? What is your plan B or what is your plan C given the current market in the US? And why do you think like, you this is the right time for doing an MBA? Like these sort of questions. I guess practicing is also super important before any school's interview because they have their standard templates. So just practicing a bit on those lines would be important. Last time I had not practiced also, I feel, for interviews. This time I again had a doc for each school
Right.
where I knew the questions they generally ask. I also read about the interviewer a bit, like what does she value, what is her background, and also preparing good questions is, I feel, very, very important. It
Right.
shows
Right.
your genuine interest, how much you care about.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah. Very valid points. Great. So let's wrap up. If there is just one or two key takeaways or messages that you want to give to people that are applying, that are looking at, say, the top US schools, also want to get scholarships, what would those be?
I feel the first would be research about, think a lot about why you are trying to do it. Get help from consultants in, triggering this thinking. Like, what are the questions you should ask and answer? If you don't know that, have a free consultation call, you know, and think about it. Talk to people who have done that or are doing it to get their perspective. And once you have done that, then, give your exam whenever you get a 2 month time, and then you know you can go for your applications. Like, you know, application fee waivers are there in almost all colleges. And anything negative in your profile, don't think of it like that being like a permanent thing. Like, for example, I had a low CGPA in my undergrad, but I figured out when I talked to people like with you and friends that I could do courses which offset that. So I did a MBA math course, I remember, in 20 days and added that. So basically, there are solutions to every problem you might think are there in your profile. So don't think that, problems are permanent and you can't solve it. Maybe you can't apply this year, but you can apply 2 years later also. Like, for example, my last attempt was for fall 2023. I took some time, I figured, I improved my work experience, took time to figure what I actually wanted to do, talked to a lot of people, and then applied like 2 years later.
Right.
So
Right. Right. Okay. Good. Thank you, Harsh, for all this time and the insights, and congrats once again on your admits and scholarship. I hope you have a great time in the US, and yeah, we'll keep in touch.
thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Arvind, for your time and for the entire journey.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.